Limitless, Episode 7, Brian Finch, Black Op. This episode, if you say it fast, sounds like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Brian Finch, Black Op. That is no accident. When first we see Brian, he says he is seeing spots and his stomach hurts. Mike and Ike believe him. They say they'll tell the FBI and he'll get the day off. And day off is exactly what Brian was looking for. Brian is legitimately doing the open of Ferris Bueller beat for beat. Brian even quotes Ferris, "Incredible, a wildly substandard performance, and they never doubted it for an instant." For a truly epic day off, you're going to want your own NZT. This show is so fun. And speaking of fun, if you would like fun, you can pick up my 68-page graphic novel, Everlasting Survivors, Volume 1, all day long. There are limited first printing still available at Etsy.com. There will be a link in the description so that you can get yourself either the Cover A Jeff Hicks or the Cover B Nick Crook covers. Back to the show. Oh wow, that took a quick turn. Brian just got jumped and tased. No idea who those guys are, but this is no longer Brian Finch Day Off. Now that we know what is going on with Brian, we cut to the FBI headquarters. A super smug government dude comes in. He is probably part of what's the group of people who took Brian, right? He quickly says he came to talk about Brian Finch. This guy is from the CIA. He says they want to share Brian. In a big shock or twist, Naz, the boss of the FBI, says no. The CIA guy reveals that they already have Brian. When Brian comes to from being knocked out from the jumping and the tasing, he meets his CIA equivalent of Rebecca Harris. He says that we're not kidnapping you, which is entertaining because they already kidnapped Brian. Brian calls this liaison, this lead CIA guy, he calls him Rooney, which is another callback to Ferris Bueller's Day Off. He calls the communications guy Cameron, and the translator, he says, this guy, he's the sausage king of Chicago. And it's just funny because, these are all references to Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Speaking of fun things, as soon as I see the man's face appear on the screen, the man that the CIA have tapped Brian to help them capture, I said, I knew it as soon as I saw this guy. That is Andrei Orlovsky, and from AEW and UFC and all kinds of fight fame. I love the writing of this show. As the CIA leader gives Brian his NZT, Brian says, "This was supposed to be my day off." It's just nothing but fun. The creativity of the team behind this show is fun. Brian imagines Andrei Orlovsky as a comic villain, and we have NZT comic graphics pop up on screen. He was your basic action hero, and then he became a terrorist. Hard to say how, because everything is redacted. The comms guy that Brian calls Cameron seems jealous that Brian can take NZT. He inquires about it because the guy that Brian calls Cameron, he failed out of officer candidate school and has been stuck, unable to advance in his career. Back at the FBI, Boyle and Harris, they're reaching out to all their contacts, everybody that could possibly help them find Brian. Naz, she offers Rebecca Harris information. She says that if I give you this, we could both be on the line for it. She's actually showing real concern for Brian, which is, a bit of surprise and good character development for her. Harris takes the leverage that Naz is offering and uses it against the CIA. Rooney, the CIA field leader, asks Brian how much happy he has left in his happy pill, which is, once again, great writing. And he tells Brian to take a second pill today so that Brian can help them take down Orlovsky. And Brian says, "Oh, the FBI only gives me one pill a day." And he's like, "I'm sure the FBI has all kinds of rules that we aren't going to play by." Which is, it's great showing the difference between the organizations and how they operate. When Brian is on his second NZT pill for the day, and he and the CIA team are tracking Orlovsky's character, Alexei Barzev. He takes out the comms guy and the translator quick, but Rooney, the leader of the CIA crew, tases Orlovsky. This comes as no shock. The CIA guys who took Brian are the real bad guys of the episode. Brian on NZT can understand that the translator and Orlovsky are when the translator and Orlovsky are speaking Russian, and that's when he finds out that the CIA guys are the actual bad dudes. After this realization, Brian has two imaginary Brians, the classic angel on one shoulder, devil on the other gimmick. Devil Brian wants, NZT Brian to work with the bad guys. Angel Brian knows that it's a bad idea, and they're not on his shoulders, they're conversing with him. Boyle and Harris talk to a former ally of the CIA bad guys. She doesn't know much, but she does know if they're working together as a team, they're after Andrei Orlovsky. For a moment, it looks like Brian has turned Cameron, the communications guy, on his side, but quickly we see that it is not the case. Cameron kills Rooney because he and Sausage King are taking the bounty that is on Orlovsky's head, whereas Rooney just wanted to kill him to silence him and make sure they never got the bad news out about them. Interesting new development. Brian no longer is imagining himself or two of himself to give him advice. Now he's imagining Rebecca. Harris is dressed as Sloane from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And it's funny because imaginary Rebecca is not happy of how Brian is imagining her, which is extra funny because he's arguing with his imagination about what his imagination is doing. Brian makes the argument to his own imagination that Sloane is the best, and this is, very amusing because, he's arguing with himself. Back at the FBI, Naz and Boyle confront along with Harris, they confront the CIA cocky dude and make him prove to them Brian is okay. When they communicate with Brian, or the CIA guys who have Brian gives off a bunch of hints that only Harris picks up. Cameron, the CIA comms guy, who he now kills the translator just like he killed the former field leader, because Brian has convinced him that the translator was going to take him out and take the entire bounty on his own. Almost immediately, Andrei Orlovsky takes out Cameron, and now it's, a real-life MMA big bad dude taking on Brian Finch. When Brian is running from Andre, he trips, and he tries to tell him that he wasn't part of any of this, but because the NZT is wearing off, he can't speak Russian very well anymore. And at that point, Andre speaks English to Brian. Brian is shocked. He said, "You speak English?" And Andre says, "Everybody speaks some English." And so Andrei Orlovsky tells Brian to give him his remaining NZT pill. And Brian, because he's an upstanding, honest babyface, tells Andre, he said, I had poisoned this pill with nightshade extract, and, it might not be good for you. And Andre says, whether the pill makes him smart or it kills him, either way, it will lead him to a possible peace. And that's all he's looking for because he lost his family. With Brian out of NZT and lost, he starts imagining Rebecca Harris again, and he tells his imaginary Rebecca, who's dressed as Sloane, he says, "But I'm Ferris. Everything's supposed to work out for Ferris." And Rebecca says, "You have what it takes and you know what to do." So he lets out this primal scream before he passes out, and Rebecca finds him. And Brian tells her, he said, "You saved Ferris," which, super amusing stuff. Back at the FBI, Naz, she's standing up for Brian. This is, a really crazy episode, but Naz, the leader of the FBI, has probably had the most growth throughout. I mean, Brian himself has had growth, obviously, but after the meeting, Brian is talking to Rebecca, and he realizes that with all of his Ferris Bueller's Day Off references, Harris has never seen it. And he says, "I have it on VHS at my parents' house. We should go watch it right now." And we before the episode concludes, we catch back up with Arlovsky's character, who, after taking the poison pill, is hallucinating with lizards talking to him, and he gets on a school bus, and it's not revealed what actually happens with him. But before we fade to black, we have that classic Ferris Bueller spot where Brian comes out in the robe, and he's like, "Why are you still here? It's over. Go home." And so it was a very good 4 out of 5 episode. Yeah, it was fun. Come back this Friday for an update on Everlasting Survivors Volume 1 coming back to Indiegogo. See you this Monday for Monday Movie Mayhem, and come back next Wednesday for the Wednesday Rewind.